That's our NFL game of the week. Let's go over to our college game of the week here. And now that I'm lost. Now, Grant, did you just go back? Okay, Grant, fire away.
Because this week, Ethan and I had the back-to-backs in the snake order.
Yep.
And my NFL game was in the state of Florida. Well, boys, I'm staying in the state of Florida this week. And I'm going to go Tennessee and Florida. And in this aspect, Tennessee, they had a lot of hope coming into this season. Destroyed Virginia week 1. Last week, they kind of ho-hummed around against Austin, PA. It took a while to get going. And this is a big game. Well, last year, Tennessee, for big games on the road, at Georgia, at South Carolina, struggled. This game is in the swamp. And yeah, I get Florida's down, but Tennessee, they need to come out and they need to dominate early to get some confidence going for this year. And for Florida, after that drubbing they took week 1 against Utah, people want Billy Napier's head. And now with Dion and the transfer portal, with the amount of money that University of Florida could potentially spend, people don't want to wait around for, hey, I'm going to build this roster my way. It's a win now moment. And for Florida to have a big rivalry game at home in the swamp at 7 o'clock, you need to win this because their schedule's not going to get any easier after this. Guys, listen to some of these games they still have to play after Tennessee this year. And if they start off 1-2, you still have to play Georgia, Kentucky, South Carolina, Arkansas, LSU. You have to go to Missouri in the middle of November. That's a cold game for Florida. And then you end the year with Florida State. If they don't get to 6 wins this year and they don't get that bowl preparation where they have another, let's say, 13, 14 practices, especially with how embarrassed they were last year in the Las Vegas Bowl. I think it was the Las Vegas Bowl where they lost by 30. And I look into next year's schedule where they have to play an SEC schedule. They have to go to Texas. They also, wait for this, guys, have to play UCF, Miami, and Florida State next year. They play 11 Power 5 teams. And this game this weekend, this is huge for the Billy Napier area in Florida. So I'm looking forward to Florida, Tennessee.
Well, and right now I believe Florida's got a top 5 recruiting class. And Tennessee did not look great last week. Joe Milton, that's been the big knock on him. That's why he won the starting job 2 years ago over Hendon Hooker. Hendon Hooker replaced him. And then Joe Milton got a cannon. But what his biggest knock is consistency. Yeah, he's got a great arm, but he can't do it. Can't hit those short throws. Just isn't all locked in at all times. And then on the other side with Florida, I think this is going to be a good game. Both teams you're really going to find out about. And with the Billy Napier thing, Florida did a major overreaction in firing Dan Mullen when they really shouldn't have. He had one bad year, and the rest of that, he was very solid, consistent. The year before that, they were playing in the SEC championship game.
They put up 45 points.
Dan Mullen's a damn good coach. Yes. So it was a premature thing, and realistically, this is what Florida is going to get what they deserve. But for me, college game of the week here, I'm going to stay in the SEC here, but we're going over to the lovely state of Mississippi.
Oh, I know what game you're talking about.
LSU, Mississippi State. Now, LSU came in number 5 team in the country. I wasn't sold on it. They got their ass kicked against Florida State. They put up a jillion points against some roast beef Tech in week 2. They got to come in and go on the road in a hostile environment, playing Mississippi State, a team that returns 9 of 11 starters on offense and a defense that also returned a fair amount of starters as well.
And not their coach.
Will Rogers is, I would say, is probably and their coach is up there in the discussion right now, I think, for the best quarterback in the SEC. The SEC is not a great quarterback league this year. And a team that if we were to do full predictions, I think I would have picked Mississippi State second in the SEC West this year behind Alabama.
Wow.
So
Ooh.
my eyes are going to be on this LSU Mississippi State game, which I believe this is it an
I guess
afternoon or is this a night game as
I think
well?
I
11
thought it was at
a.m.
I think it was at 11 a.m.
11 a.m. kick.
Oh, yes, it is. It is. LSU is a 9.5-point favorite. Take Mississippi State. I think they struggled last week against the Arizona team, who I think is a lot better than what people think. Jaden Delore is a tremendous quarterback in a very deep Pac-12 quarterback division or conference.
Conference.
And Arizona's gonna they're definitely not gonna be playing in Vegas, but they have the potential to upset some teams for sure. And I think Mississippi State covers the 9.5, and we could see a team that a lot of people had in the playoff and potentially playing for a national title out by week 3 in LSU.
Sexy pick.
Thank
Ethan,
you.
if you don't pick the game I'm thinking of, you're not allowed to. You know what I'm saying?
So I'm very much. I wanted to do Washington versus Michigan State after the whole Mel Tucker fiasco.
Fair.
But I gotta go with the game I'm going to down in Chapel Hill, Minnesota versus North Carolina.
Yeah.
It's the easiest pick for me. I think it's going to be a fascinating game. Really, what it's going to come down to is Drake May versus Joe Rossi. Can the Gophers defense slow him down enough to get points on the board? I don't think. I should say I absolutely think last week's play calling for Minnesota was by design. You ran it 50 times. You're not going to run it 50 times versus North Carolina. You are trying to hide certain formations and certain plays from North Carolina for good reason. They haven't seen a lot of Athan. No one's seen a lot of Athan. Even versus Nebraska, they didn't show a lot. They ran crossers for the most part, maybe a deep shot here and there. Then they ran it. But even versus Nebraska, our freshman running back that ran for 195 yards last week got 2 carries. So he's trying to hide these things. He got his feet wet the Eastern Michigan game. He's going to be the bell cow moving forward. He actually stole him out of Michigan's backyard. Woohoo, Darius Taylor. But no, I think it's going to be fascinating. North Carolina's defense is not that great. They're better than last year, but that's not really saying a whole lot. They sucked. They were probably one of the worst. I'd say one of
them
the
in USC.
Yeah, them and USC might have been the worst too. Like easily top 10. But if the Gophers O-line can control the game and Rossi can hold them to 20, 24 points or less, like I legitimately think the Gophers come back with a W.
This is a rider pick for you, Ethan. I will go Minnesota +8.
Do it.
That's what Carolina's 8-point favorites right
now.
now. But I'm gonna go. This is a rider pick. Minnesota +8.
Well,
and here,
just gave out 2 free bets here right now. We got Mississippi State +9.5, Minnesota +8.
Well, here's the thing, guys. It's Carolina. They don't have a lot of experience at the wide receiver position, especially now with injuries and NCAA viewing guys as ineligible.
He's
that's
transferred 3 times. He can go F himself. Like all due respect.
Well, I think it was twice, and the first time it was the COVID year, so he technically didn't play for NC Central or whatever it was called. But Carolina's their front 7 is not bad, but their back 4 is awful, or back 5.
Mm-hmm.
Their secondary is not good. So if you can keep McManus, if you can keep him upright, the Gophers should move the ball against Carolina. It's just then you got to finish in the red area. I think that's what it's going to come down to.
That's what killed them versus Eastern Michigan. They should have won that game by 30 if they weren't so shitty in the red zone.
Yeah.
But at the same time, I think they're being so conservative down there to save those play calls for this weekend or going forward. Because they just ran it. There was nothing like creative at all once they got it.
And I think, when you look at the skill set between the Gophers and Eastern Michigan, you should be able to run down their throat. You shouldn't have to worry about anything like that. So, we'll see. It's going to be a game of chess. And to your point, Drake May hasn't played that good yet this year. He hasn't had that stellar performance like he had all of last year. So, we'll see. Maybe he misses his play caller, who's now in Madison. To be determined.
And he hasn't faced a DC probably maybe Clemson last year that as good as Joe Rossi. Like
I would argue Clemson last year, and then probably Pittsburgh, with
other than that,
Narduzzi as our head coach.
Yeah, like other than that, like there's no way Joe Rossi's top 10 defensive coordinator. There's a reason Auburn offered them their DC.
Oh, is that who Hugh tried to pry away?
I believe that's who the SEC team that tried to pry him out.
Well, yeah. Either them or Ole Miss.
It's only one of those two, yeah.
But I don't know. I think Kiffin he'd hire I think you're right. It's Auburn because I think Kiffin he's got too much of an ego and he's an SEC fanboy.
Mm-hmm.
So he'd go after the overrated Alabama D coordinator over the better coach at Minnesota.
Yeah, exactly.
That's true. But yeah, no, I'm excited to watch this game. It's the 2:30 Central game on ESPN, and same time as the Bison will be playing. So I guess I'll have the Gopher game on the small one, Bison on the big one. I got this worked out. All right.